What is up, Pack-A-Day podcast members? Welcome into our members-only Q&A. We are live, and we are going to get to all of your questions here in just a moment. Should have about 45 minutes to an hour. Right after that, going to be talking to Paul Farrington and Ziggy for our Behind Enemy Lines this week, which I'm very much looking forward to. Excited to chat with all of you guys. Make sure to get all those questions in. Obviously, if you are here live, that means you're a member. If you are listening afterwards, make sure to check out those memberships. It gets you in the live show ability to ask questions, and of course gets you that bonus content with Aaron Nagler every week, plus some other stuff that comes out from time to time as well. So make sure to check those out when you get a chance. Yeah, we've got a lot of great stuff coming up, including tomorrow, Paul Farrington show, Paul Brettel tomorrow, members only Q&A today. We had the Wall episode earlier. We'll have the Wall film breakdown earlier, or a little bit later today around 3 p.m. as well. For you that are members, you already have it out there. So yeah, lots of great stuff coming up. And thank you again for all of your support. And thank you for supporting the channel. We appreciate that a ton. All right, let's get to your wonderful questions, starting with most hated Chicagoan. Caleb Williams is who I thought he was. The Bears did it again. Jaden had his best rookie season ever. Drake is a top 4 right now, and Bo Nix has just been better. Maybe next time, suckers, go Pack, go. I'm not willing to take any victory laps on Caleb quite yet. It's still pretty early on. I would say if you were redrafting right now, I think Drake might actually go number 1 overall. Jaden Daniels probably still number 2. If you want to swap those two, I have no argument with it. I would probably need to do a much deeper film dive if I wanted to make a really educated take on that. But either way, those two would be top 2. Then it would get a little bit interesting. Penix has been up and down. McCarthy looked really rough in his first 2 games, and it seems like they have not wanted to bring him back from that injury almost at all. We'll see what he can do the remainder of the season. Just going to be very interesting kind of from here on out of how, some of those quarterbacks play for the remainder of the time. But it's a very interesting quarterback class. And right now it's certainly, at least this past week, didn't look great for Caleb. Where he ends up in the hierarchy of quarterbacks, we'll have to kind of wait and see. But right now it's been certainly a bit of a struggle. And this past week was really rough for sure. It seems like Banks has started to settle down at left guard. It seems like he's improving every week. Is that what you've seen too, or am I missing something? Ethan, I haven't finished grading the offense yet this week, so I will hold out on that. I can look at PFF really quick just to see what they gave him this week. But I can speak to the other weeks here in just a moment. They gave him his best grade yet this week. So I would assume that's the case as well. I talked about this pretty much at length after that first game that he played. Even the first game, which wasn't good, I didn't think was anywhere near as bad as people were making it out to be. And even on top of that, you could clearly tell that he was hurt and banged up. Then his first game back, semi-healthy, he looked fine, was an average, I would say neutral level player in that game. I thought last week was a little bit better, or 2 weeks ago, I guess now against Arizona was a little bit better. And hopefully that is the case as I go through my grades this week as well, that he was even better this week. He's a good, solid guard. Again, I've said it a million times. I'll say it again. I doubt very much that he's going to live up to that contract. That's a really big contract for a starting guard in the NFL. But if he can be a good, solid left guard, it can still have some dividends that it pays to it. But they have, I think they're still hoping for a little bit more, and hopefully his play continues to increase. He was good in San Fran a year ago. I don't have any major concerns on his, other than, again, was it just a bit of an overpay, and would there been a better use of those resources? That's certainly arguable, but I think he's going to be a fine starter for Green Bay this year and next, and then we'll kind of see after that. Wow, Jordan Love and Tucker Kraft is all I got to say. All the credit in the world to Watson. That dude worked his ass off to get back and balled out in his first game back already. Can't say enough about all 3 of those, but I just want to focus on Watson for a moment. Not only to work his way back, but imagine in that game, you don't have Watson coming back. Even if it took him 1 more week to be ready, you're going in that game without Watson, without Reed, without Dontavian Wicks. Like, that makes it really tough. You're going to get a lot of Romeo Doubs, Matthew Golden, and probably Malik Heath. Maybe they're able to, hold it up, and maybe they're able to still get the win. Obviously, Tucker Kraft was still huge, but don't mitigate either the effect that Christian Watson has on stretching the field to open up some of that underneath stuff for Tucker Kraft. So huge game for him, meaning Christian Watson just coming back, helping his team, and looking as good as he did in that first week back. I know it's hard to tell for position coaches if you can't tell the new defensive line coach hasn't made a big difference, especially with the defensive tackles. I would think so as well. Again, I always hesitate to give too much, hate, if you will, or too much praise on position coaches, just because, again, it's impossible for us to know exactly what's going on. I do know that Micah's made a huge impact in just drawing a lot of attention, which does make it a little bit easier for other players. I'm sure Jason Rebrovich would have loved to have had Micah Parsons when he was defensive line coach as well. Probably would have made everything look a little bit better. But to your point, Troy, what I always look at is who's playing at or above expectations or below expectations. Colby Wooden is above my expectations so far. I think Devontae Wyatt's playing some of his best football of his career. Mike has been better than advertised. And then LVN and Rashawn Gary and even Kingsley Nigbari have had really strong seasons as well. So it certainly seems like it's off to a great start, and hopefully that continues moving forward. But yeah, again, tough to say for sure, but I would bet that he's doing a good job with that defensive line room. I'm also becoming more convinced that the Packers need a new offensive line coach, especially since Mike Wall is pointing out the consistently bad technique by the offensive line. Yeah, the longer that this goes on, the more concerned that I get. In the past, the Packers have had these situations where like first 6 weeks of the season, it just feels a little bit disjointed, and then they settle in and start to play better. But usually around week 8, week 9, you start seeing that play better. Maybe it happens this week against Carolina, and maybe the offensive line balls out. Yeah, I will say, in pass pro this last week against Pittsburgh, I thought they were pretty freaking awesome against a really, really good, pressure front from Pittsburgh. Plus they were bringing some additional blitzers quite often. I thought the pass protection was really good in this game. The run blocking just not good enough yet. And at some point, hopefully it just gets better. But if not, then, there's certainly some questions to be asked there. I kept my oldest kid up late to watch the game again. Wife didn't even fuss. We had a good time watching Parsons toast a triple team. He fell asleep after the game was in hand, but was a lot of fun. Love that, John. Did you let him stay up for the World Series game last night? I don't know how much longer I would have made it. I think that was I probably would have made it one more inning, and then I probably would have convinced myself just to stay up. But I only got like 3 hours of sleep the night before, and it was 2 a.m. and that game was still going. I'm just like, you've got to end this thing. And then, of course, it was Freddie Freeman who hit the home run at the end. But yeah, that was a crazy, crazy game. It's going to be interesting to see how they follow that up tonight with all the pitching that pitched yesterday and just what bullpen can actually get through the game and things like that. So that was crazy, but glad you got to enjoy the Packers game this past weekend with your family. It's great that Goody went out and got that new DB. What's his name? Valentine, right? He looked pretty good. Could be an important move. Yeah, Valentine looked good this past week. I know you're obviously saying that facetiously, but I just need to see these corners overall play still better football. Nixon had the rough week this past week. Valentine's had some struggles as well this season. Hobbs has clearly had his struggles. Just need to see a higher level of play. To me, we've talked about it. Run blocking on the offensive line, cornerback play, taking the ball away, turnovers, and then special teams are the 4 things that I need to kind of see consistently improve moving forward. In all seriousness, I love that Matt LaFleur and half professed all the faith in Hobbs and then benched him. Rodgers was out there looking for 21 to pick on, and he was on the bench. To be fair, he did have 25 to pick on a little bit in that game. But yes, I do think it was the right move. I still think Hobbs can play good football. I still think he'll bounce back at some point, but I thought it was the right move to go to Carrington Valentine. I thought Valentine backed up their decision with a pretty darn good game overall. I hated that the Packers lost Neiman, Sims, and Robinson, not stars, but end of the roster can make a difference. A missed team's tackle could flip a game, and we never know. Sure, Goody will fill in. Yeah, I think Christian Welch is probably a fairly safe bet for that, potential linebacker / special team spot, but Neiman was really, really good at it, and those are tough shoes to fill. Hopefully Welch is up to the task. And, again, losing your 4th tight end and your, 6th or 7th corner isn't the end of the world, but that stuff gets churned and you lose some good players at the bottom of your roster. And at some point you might need those guys. And if they're not there, it's definitely a bit of a bummer. So, excited for Micah Robinson to get a chance with Tennessee. Ben Sims, not as excited because he's a Viking. The Broncos did claim him as well. So even if the Vikings didn't, they were going to lose Ben Sims to the Broncos. But yeah, just a bit of a bummer for sure. Got to just find a way to survive it though. Next guy up mentality for all those spots. Great to hear Mike Wall break down Steelers jumbo package. Maybe you could counter by moving Parsons to Sam. I wonder how half would have adjusted if needed. A healthy LVN would have helped. Yeah, it would have been interesting to see what they would have done against that in the second half if they would have made some adjustments overall. They would have needed to. It was definitely an issue in the first half. Maybe they're not willing to give in and say, hey, you can throw the ball on us easier. And they're just going to say, we're going to make you run the ball on us. And we think we can get you for a couple stops and get you in some 2nd and 3rd and longs. But it would have been an interesting second half if things didn't change and their left guard didn't go out. That's for sure. So is there going to be some Asante Samuel Jr. news? Been hearing some things. It sounds like he may not do anything until after the trade deadline. And then again, he's going to be probably pretty desired for a free agent on the open market. I still kind of stand by. I don't think he's a great fit for this defense, but the more cover guys that you can get, the better. And certainly right now, there's plenty of questions with Nate Hobbs, Keyshawn Nixon, etc. So I'm all for adding competition to that room. If Green Bay can find a way to get him, I'd be all for it. And again, I certainly think that they could find a way to utilize him. And if there's anybody that can get the best ball out of him, hopefully that is Jeff Halfley. How do you feel about picking up Alontae Taylor? What would it take, a sixth or a fifth? I need to verify this, but I remember pretty clearly in the past, Alontae Taylor playing primarily slot corner. I don't know what he's been doing this year. Yeah, primarily slot corner. He played some right corner. Let's see his snaps by position here. Yeah, so he's played 172 of his snaps as left and right corner. So he has played some outside as well. In 2024. I played primarily wide corner in 2024 as well. All right. So I thought he was primarily slot, but it looks like he's been mixed and matched pretty well. I'd have to probably go and look at the tape a little bit further. Maybe that's something that I'll do in a little bit, if I have some time coming up this weekend or before the bye. But I don't know. I'd be interested in adding competition to this room. I don't know how much he adds. Again, if you're just going off of PFF grades, his grades in 2022, 54.5, followed by 45.7, 45.0. And then he does have a 64.3 this year. But I'm willing to bet, again, not that PFF grades are everything, but so Alontae Taylor's a 64.3. Keyshawn Nixon's a 63.6. So it's basically the same. Nate Hobbs was a 59.6, so a little bit lower. And then Carrington is a 72.1. So I think Bullard's going to continue to play a lot. My guess is Nixon continues to play. Valentine's probably been their best corner so far. Again, this would probably be, more of just a competition pickup. And you're probably right in that range of a fifth or sixth pick, John, if they did want to go in that direction. Still waking up from that Dodgers game. Howard, I was able to sleep a little bit later today. I didn't have anything on my calendar this morning until talking to Paul Brettel at 10 a.m. So slept till about 9 o'clock, got to bed around 2, which 7 hours of sleep for me this time of year is about as much as I possibly get. But no question about it. I was hoping to go to bed around like 1 o'clock last night at the latest. And that definitely pushed me back a bit. But it was a really fun and entertaining game for sure. My wife, a Steelers fan, said it was the worst game she's ever been because there was no energy. Packers fans, despite maybe being 1/3 of the crowd, absolutely took over that stadium. Doesn't surprise me, Randy. That's what we do as Packers fans. Always fun to see that atmosphere as a road fan and kind of see that camaraderie between the Packers fans and making all that noise and the Go Pack Go chants. That's a ton of fun, and it can be really demoralizing for the home crowd and for the home team when your team is losing and the other crowd or the away fans are louder than your fans. It's a not fun situation. So kudos to the Packers fans that showed up for that game. Dustin, thank you for the super chat, my friend. Really appreciate you. Hey, Andy, where does Valentine sit in the league and or Goot's draft history as a 7th round pick? Could you trade Wicks for a corner? Seems like we are wildly deep at wide receiver, but need corner help. Lattimore, Diggs, Ramsey, etc. Goot's had some really good 7th round picks. Rasheed Walker certainly in that conversation as well. So I'd have to go and look at it as far as like pantheon of 7th round picks. Carrington's probably not quite in that upper echelon of players. For Green Bay as of late, probably their best one. Him and Rasheed Walker. Him and Rasheed Walker are the two best 7th round picks of Goody's time. There's nobody else really even kind of close in the conversation. So those are the big two. I think when you get a starting left tackle, Rasheed's probably a little bit more important, although starting corner is super important as well. But those are certainly two very important players for Green Bay, and getting them with 7th round picks is pretty impressive. As far as trading a wide receiver, I've talked about this, I think, a million times by this point, but I'll reiterate it again. I have no interest in trading any players from this team. You have 6 draft picks next year, 2nd through 7th. You have 7+ comp picks the following year. Might even be, no, it's 6+ comp picks because you traded away a pick for Darian Kennard. So 6+ comp picks. And then you've got 7 full picks in 2028 that you can trade as well. So you've got 3 years worth of draft choices that you can trade away. You are trying to win a Super Bowl right now. I'm not robbing Peter to pay Paul. I'm not, going against one position to try to acquire another. If you want to acquire a corner, a defensive tackle, a offensive lineman, etc., you have the draft capital. Even missing 2 first-round picks, you have the draft capital to go get that done. I know that there's maybe a cap on how many draft picks that you want. You can figure that out later. And after this season, if you want to trade a Wicks or somebody to recuperate draft capital, then you can look at that time. But for me, I'm not touching any players on this team. I want all the depth. I want all the talent. I want everyone that I possibly can. And if you want to go acquire somebody like one of those corners that you're mentioning, then you go out and acquire one of those corners utilizing the draft capital that you have. So no interest in trading Wicks or any other player, but appreciate the question, Dustin. I certainly understand the logic behind it, but you have plenty of picks to go get players. Use those, not the players that you have on this team right now. Steelers fans in the stadium were shocked there were so many Packers fans in attendance. John, you love to hear it. You absolutely love to hear it. Andy, what do you think the problem is with the run blocking, that it's not as good as last year? I think there's a variety of things. I think, first of all, the technique's not good. I think all of them need to use better hand usage, better footwork, and just, again, on some of the double teams, better communication and just better, tandem blocking in those situations. I think individual players need to play better. Even though I think Banks has settled in, I still think there's a level better that he can play at. I think Elton's having one of the worst seasons of his career so far. Even though he's settled in a little bit, I know that there's a lot better version of him that he can play at that I need to see. Even Sean Ryan, I think, is, last year, I thought he was playing better than what he has this year. Jordan Morgan was a first-round pick for a reason. He needs to play better. And then, Zach Tom just kind of dealing with some injury stuff. He'll be fine. And I think even Rasheed Walker, I've seen him play better football as well. So to me, it's a combination of, I think some of it's been some dull play calling. I think Matt can be a little bit more creative in the run game and a little less predictable. I think the run blocking and just the technique needs to be better. And I think some of these individual offensive linemen need to look at themselves in the mirror and play some better football as well. Thankfully, the pass protection really, really good as of late, but the run blocking still has a long ways to go. Do you think the Packers need to go out and pick up another corner? I'm not completely on that train yet. I feel I need to see Hobbs in the slot before I'm ready to ditch him like people want. Yeah, there's no ditching Hobbs, and I still think he'll play better. I personally think in obvious passing situations, getting Hobbs out there instead of Bullard might make sense, but Bullard's been really good as of late. I don't necessarily want to see him off the field too much the way that he is playing right now. What I will say is, if it's me personally, I want to give myself as many chances, outs, bites at the apple, etc. I want to add more competition. You've got Kamal Hadden taking one of your corner spots, and he's been inactive for games. I like Kamal Hadden. I'm a Kamal Hadden believer. I think he can be fine. But if you can upgrade from Kamal Hadden to a corner who has the ability to compete with the corners that you already have and potentially cover should you have an injury to somebody, I wouldn't hate that scenario at all. I think corner, I still would like one more defensive tackle, even though I think those guys inside are playing well. I think you're one injury away from that being perilously thin. And I think Nasir Stackhouse is probably still a year or two away from being able to be more of a competent rotational defensive lineman. And then I still think you can even, I doubt it because of the investments that they've already made. I wouldn't hate if they found another offensive lineman to compete as well, as crazy as that may seem. So to me, the two I'm really probably looking at, though, are defensive tackle and corner. And yeah, if you can get more depth and competition at those spots, by all means, go ahead, do it. And I would have no issue with that whatsoever. Andy, who are your least favorite Packers while they played? I'll take a guess. It's Jonathan Garvin. No, I mean, Jonathan Garvin did nothing wrong other than that the Packers played him way too much. Like, he was a solid, I think he just got either a tryout or picked up again as well. I thought he just got picked up. Maybe it was just a tryout with a team. But either way, I know I just saw his name pop up the other day again. But as a practice squad guy, or as a sixth defensive end that you think you can develop when you draft him in the 7th round, that's fine. When you start playing him 20, 30 snaps, that's not Jonathan Garvin's fault. That's your fault as a staff. Jimmy Graham is probably one of the top ones on my list. He was such a disappointment and just gave no effort as a run blocker at all. It was just brutal to watch. And then he just didn't have the juice left as a pass catcher either. That sucked. Byron Bell was a train wreck to watch at guard. That was no fun. Clinton Dix right before he got traded, just minimal effort at safety with a lot of talent. And again, I think I was one of the first people on the train of this dude's not playing well. And everyone's like, he's an all-pro. I'm like, he's not playing well. And then he, of course, doesn't play well for the Packers, doesn't play well for the Bears, doesn't play well for the Commanders, et cetera, et cetera. And those are probably some of the ones that come to mind. Hot Clinton Dix seemed like a cool dude. You know, I saw some of his stuff with Matt Ramage, and like he seemed like a good person and everything. So I just didn't necessarily enjoy the brand of football. Jimmy Graham was probably one of my least favorites. Martellus Bennett, obviously, probably up there as well. Those would probably be a couple on the top of my list. Sammy Watkins was just weird. Again, that was a 1 year, pretty close to a vet minimum signing, and it just didn't work out right. And Green Bay recognized it quickly, moved on, and that was that. So it was what it was. The game where Love appeared to turn the corner and give us all hope was against the Steelers in 2023, even in a loss. How fitting for him to have the night he did Sunday. Keith, that's a great point. I didn't think of it that way, but you're 1,000,000% right. That was when the offense sort of started to click into place a little bit more, and you saw a little bit more of proof of concept of what Jordan and that offense could be. And then I think it was right after that they spit out that 3-game win streak with KC. It was the Chargers and then Detroit, Chargers, KC, then Detroit. I think it was in that order, but that was a wonderful stretch of play for Jordan in that Packers offense. So yeah, you're 1,000,000% correct, and I appreciate you bringing that up because I didn't put 2 and 2 together on that. Mary, I was at the game and it was my favorite road game I've seen them play in person. What's your favorite regular season road game you were able to attend? I'll be honest, Mary. First of all, that's awesome. I'm glad you were able to go and enjoy that game. That was certainly a fun one to be at. I've not been at very many road games. In fact, I think I've been. Oh, okay. I've been at 3, 4. I think I've been at 4. I was at the Minnesota game in the Metrodome at the time when Favre made his first start against the Packers for Green Bay. That was a fun game. The Clay Matthews ripping the ball out of Adrian Peterson's hands and returning it for a touchdown. Finley had a huge play in that game, but it was not what you were hoping for, and the Vikings eventually win that game. So really tight game, really close game, but a fun game. I'm just disappointed Green Bay didn't come out on top. I was at Minnesota a couple years ago for a road game in their new stadium. And I think they lost that one as well, if I remember correctly. It was fine, but with again the Packers losing, I didn't enjoy it. I was in St. Louis for a Rams game, and that was the one where Steven Jackson called out the fans in St. Louis after that game because there was more Packers fans there than there were Rams fans. I think it was Donald Driver made a crazy one-handed catch down the sideline, and there was a couple other really sweet plays in that game as well. Green Bay played Brandon Schiller as a safety in that game to then drop him into the box to add an extra linebacker and play against Steven Jackson in that incredible Rams running game. So there's some really fun stuff in that one. But yeah, that was a very fun game. And was I at 2 St. Louis games? I might have been at 2 St. Louis games. I'll have to think, but no, I think it was just 1. And then the other game where I was at was the Falcons game in Atlanta. This was probably 8, maybe more years ago now. But that was a big time Monday night. I think it was either Sunday night or Monday night. I think it was a Sunday night football game in Atlanta in the Mercedes-Benz Dome or whatever. And it was a cool scene. And the Packers went in there against, I think, a team that in Atlanta was maybe undefeated at the time, or at least had a really good record. And Green Bay went in there and beat them. And that was a really fun game. That was the one I probably have the best memories of. So that Falcons game was probably my favorite. The Rams game in St. Louis was fun as well. Honestly, what GMs have done better than Goody in recent years? Eagles went all in on the credit card while we've stayed responsible with a good, deep, young roster. Carter, I think Goody's done some really good things. I think there's a couple things he'd probably like to have back. But I think he's done a tremendous job overall. This is a team that's now, has the team to compete for a Super Bowl. But at the end of the day, Goody and Matt, Jordan Love, legacies are built on Super Bowl wins. And Micah Parsons, right? Xavier McKinney. Mike McCarthy is looked at totally different if he doesn't win that Super Bowl in Green Bay, as is Ted Thompson. If Ted Thompson doesn't win that Super Bowl, his legacy looks totally different. You don't have a Mike McCarthy drive or Mike McCarthy way in Green Bay without that Super Bowl. Aaron's legacy is changed. He's more in the Dan Marino conversation, or with some of the great quarterbacks who never won a Super Bowl if he didn't win it. In fact, can you even imagine the conversations about Rodgers if he never won one? Of yep, he was one of the all-time greats, but he never won one, never came through in the clutch, never delivered when it mattered most. Imagine how that would change his legacy. So if Matt and Goody and Micah, and obviously we can talk about Reggie White, Clay Matthews, Charles Woodson, etc., and how that adds to their legacy. But if Micah and Jordan and Matt and Brian and this team wants the accolades, if they want the ability to, kind of have that legendary status as Green Bay Packers, go win the Super Bowl. And then that'll shut everyone up, at least for a little bit. And they'll have the right to brag, as good as any, players, coaches, GMs in the league because of what they were able to do winning a Super Bowl. But the onus is on the team now to go and do that, to put them in that status. Or the continued questions will be, can Matt win the big one? Can Brian put together a Super Bowl roster? Can Jordan be a Super Bowl winning quarterback? Is Micah Parsons good enough of a defender to get you, so on and so forth? Those questions will just always remain, for right or wrong, better or worse, just usually the way that it goes. Hope the team has put this W in the past and remains focused. Thoughts? Yeah, I don't have a ton of concern over that. It's a good team to play this week in Carolina. I don't think it's going to be a trap game. You get back at home. They've been really good at home so far. Could it maybe be in a annoying 9-point win or something like that? Sure, maybe. I'm sure Carolina is going to want to bounce back after a brutal performance against the Buffalo Bills this past week. But now they head on the road to Green Bay. I'm sure the morale is not high after a 40-9 beatdown. I think that's what it was, a beatdown against the Bills this past week. So I think this is one where Green Bay, still needs to take it seriously, still needs to be focused, still needs to go out and win this game, but they can get this win and then, start looking at Philly right after in what's going to be a big time game right after this Panthers game. Do you think we hold on to Haversick for a few more weeks just to make sure McManus gets fully healthy? Yeah, I think it's fully dependent on where McManus is at and how comfortable they feel with him. If they feel like there's some sort of, potential aggravation risk or re-injury or anything like that, or even if he's just like 80% right now, I have a feeling they might keep him as an insurance policy. I don't know that they need the roster spot right now. It doesn't seem like any of the injured reserve guys, they haven't even opened the window yet for Marshawn Lloyd or Brenton Cox or Colin Oliver or anyone like that. So they don't have anyone that's ready to come back from injury. And, they probably replaced Nick Neiman with a Christian Welch would be my guess, as Neiman probably goes on IR. So they don't really need the roster spot for anything. So as long as there's any doubt or question, I would expect that they just kind of hold on to Haversick for the time being as a strong insurance policy. You go into the game with only 48 active players anyway. You need to deactivate 5 or more if you call up players from the practice squad. It's not really hurting anything at the moment to have him on the 53. New member, maybe you've covered this. What did you do before you went full-time with us? Well, first of all, thank you so much for becoming a new member. Most hated Michigander. Appreciate that a ton. I was a director of recruiting for a staffing agency in Green Bay. Had a team that reported up to me in Green Bay, and we did, kind of recruiting nationwide, including for some local businesses here in Green Bay. So that was my full time. I really enjoyed that job. I really enjoy recruiting. I think it's a ton of fun, but would not trade this for anything in the world unless the Packers want to make me the new general manager. And I legitimately think that would, I don't know what else. I guess if any other team also wanted me to be the general manager, I would take that as well. That might be the only thing. GM of a pro team, I would take baseball, basketball, football. I don't know if I'd do hockey, but general manager of one of those 3 would probably be about the only thing that could get me from doing what I'm doing. And luckily or unluckily for you guys, I don't see that happening anytime soon. So I think we're safe to put out a few more podcast episodes. Are there any defunct sports blogs, shows, pods that you miss? Personally, I love Football Outsiders. Was a great read. That's a really good question. There probably is, but I don't have anything off the top of my head. Yeah, the one that I missed a ton when ESPN laid him off was the Low Post, which is now the Zach Lowe show through the Ringer. My enjoyment of the NBA is like almost connected to Zach Lowe because he covers the whole league in such a unbelievable way that I feel like I know everything about all the teams by just listening to him every single week. So he's my go-to, and I love NBA basketball. I'm a huge fan of it. Obviously, it's not NFL. NFL is still my passion or whatever, but I love having games on it almost every night now, just kind of in the background as I'm working or going through grades. And there's just so many great performers. So when that was gone last year, I was like, I didn't know what to do. I'm like, this sucks. Like the whole season is nowhere near as fun. So that was a big one, and so happy he's back on the Zach Lowe show. Do you attribute problems with the run blocking to poor offensive line coaching? Sounded like Mike Wall thinks it's poor technique and or problems with the scheme. Is some of it on Butkus? Yeah, we touched base on this a little bit earlier, Jason, but I think individual players need to step up and be better. I think the coaching needs to be better. The technique needs to be better. I think just everything combined. And again, some of the play calling from Matt needs to be better as well. Just think they need to figure out a way to get that run game being more efficient, more cohesive, and just being able to be relied upon a little bit more. And until it is, there's going to continue to be some frustrating moments in games because they're going to have to continue to run the ball. And it's just frustrating when you're only going for 1, 2 or less at a time and you're getting this into some long down and distance situations. In memory, Rodgers, here's a I see what you're saying. Here's a conspiracy theory. The NFL is intentionally officiating the tush push terribly to get it out of the league. I think you're giving the officials too much credit. I think their ineptitude to officiate the play correctly is all in and of its own on its own accord. I don't think they're trying to be inept. I think it just comes naturally. If it could be officiated correctly, I still am a little bit more on the stance of like, hey, you want to get this thing out of the game, just freaking stop it, and then it'll get out of the game. I don't like the play. I kind of wish it was banned, if I'm being honest. I just think there's a lot of injury. I know it hasn't really borne out this way, but I mean, ask Jason Kelsey about it. And he's like, if we had to run like 2 of those plays in a row, he's like, I was feeling it after those 2 plays. I think the officiating of it, I think, some of the offsides, all of it just feels like a mess. It's just ugly. It's not fun. It's not officiated correctly. And I just wish that, I wish it was out of the game. I wish it was because teams were stopping it and that we didn't have to make a rule to stop a play or whatever. But it just, I don't know. It's just a non-fun play. And the less of it we can have, the better, whether that's through teams just eventually stopping it or the league changing the rule, whatever. But yeah, not a fan of the play overall. Have you ever figured out what happened with Kamal Martin? Why wasn't he given the time to develop like Quay? The talk after his rookie camp was that he was dynamic but out of control like Quay. Yeah, I think the first thing that you need to recognize with things like this is if a team gives up on a player, they'll get another chance, right? I think Kamal Martin had a cup of coffee with the Panthers, if I remember correctly. Carolina Panthers, and that was it. So Green Bay gave him a year, gave him a bunch of playing time. He goes to Carolina for a year after that, and then nobody else touched him. If the entire NFL is out on a player and the next team that gives him a shot is out on the player, Green Bay made the right decision, right? So my guess is there was some either locker room thing or just his play was too sporadic or they couldn't trust him out on the field or whatever that thing was that kept him from being a productive NFL player. I don't know the exact thing, don't know what it was, but it's like the same thing with Amari Rodgers, right? I know a lot of people are hey, if they just would have used Amari better, if Randall Cobb went to been there, it's like, dude went to Houston, got a pretty strong opportunity in Houston, including some playing time, and was still out of the league pretty damn quick right after that. Sometimes it just doesn't work. Player isn't as good as you thought. I think Kamal Martin probably had maybe a couple other things going on there as well, but Green Bay clearly made the right decision and nobody else in the NFL really wanted to touch him and didn't even give him an opportunity following his stint with Carolina. Brian, thanks for the super chat. This feels like a huge emotional win. Are you worried about a potential trap game this week? Yeah, touch base on this a little bit. I'm not. I think the big thing is that Green Bay played like crap for a half of that game. It's such an interesting dynamic for me because it really feels like Packers fans. I'm not calling out anyone. And I'm not even saying that this is a bad emotion to have or anything like that. Saying one way is right or wrong. It feels like it's just how did the game like end? What was the last feel of that game? If you flipped it, and so what was the, if Green Bay outscored Pittsburgh 28-9 in the first half, and then got outscored 16-7 in the second half, and as Pittsburgh tried to mount a comeback, I bet Packers fans would be feeling different. If they played really well in the first half and then kind of crapped the bed in the second half, it'd be like, oh, like same thing. This team just can't keep their foot on the gas and like they just always let it up. But because it's the reverse, because they sucked in the first half and then were awesome in the second half, it's, oh, this team's awesome and they're amazing. I think they have a lot to learn from that game. And I think for the third consecutive week, they put up very minimal points in the first half. I think the run blocking still needs to be a lot better. I think the defensive backfield, specifically the corners, still needs to be a lot better. So I think Green Bay is going to look at tape at this game and say, we've got a lot of work to do. And while I think it's an emotional win, it's a big win, it's a nice comeback win, and everyone feels good, I think the coaches are going to be able to keep this team pretty motivated and on track based on some of the stuff that they put on tape in the first half of that game. So yeah, again, could it be an annoying, 7, 8, 9 point win against Carolina? Sure. And maybe it doesn't feel as good as the 10-point win against Pittsburgh, but get the win and let's see what this big game against Philly entails the week after that. Although the offense has a great second half, I don't think it completely absolves Matt from calling a few too many screens and horizontal passing plays. He should unleash Jordan to start games. John, it all depends on what the opposing defense is giving you. And so when teams are in, and again, I haven't gone back and watched the full offensive tape yet, so I can't speak to this verbatim or 100% for certainty, but you have to take, or you're trying to take what the defense is saying, hey, we'll give to you. I mean, think of it this way, right? If Xavier McKinney and Evan Williams are playing two high safeties and teams keep throwing deep against the Packers, it's doing exactly like you will thank the other team. You'll say, thank you very much. Continue, please, to throw against Evan Williams and Xavier McKinney with our two high deep safeties, and good luck to you because you're going to struggle all game long. But Green Bay's giving up a lot of the easy short routes, right? The easy throws. And so the onus is on the quarterback of the other team to say, we'll stay patient. We'll take those easy throws and we'll take the 3, 4, 5-yard checkdowns, play after play after play after play. We'll be really patient. We'll work our way down the field and then we'll try to convert for a touchdown. When other teams are daring you to do the same thing and saying, we're not going to allow you to throw the ball deep, you have to have the patience to say, we're going to run the ball or we're going to check it down or have some of the short and horizontal passing plays. The other thing I will say is you're already struggling to run against a defense that plays pretty wide. If you don't run anything horizontal, and Matt LaFleur talked about in a post-game presser of how they didn't want to run any jet sweeps or reverses because those defensive ends and linebackers are already so wide, but you still need to be able to threaten the edges, especially with a team like Pittsburgh, whose defensive backfield did not tackle very well. And they were pretty successful on that play outside to Tucker Kraft for the touchdown, the Savion Williams touchdown. They got plays on those horizontal plays by some pretty good drawn out stuff that when they ran that. So you still need to keep a team honest by keeping them wide, just as much as you need to keep them honest by keeping them vertical when you get those chances to take them vertical. So again, I understand the sentiment of like, hey, like let Jordan throw. And we talked about it this week. I talked about it with Aaron Nagler as well. It does feel like this needs to be Jordan's offense first and foremost. Let him cook. But I think if you're just going to say like, hey, we're not going to run the football because it's unsuccessful and we're getting rid of some of the horizontal and short passing game, good luck. You become very predictable, very fast. Teams are going to play a lot of too high safety. All of that stuff's going to be contested. You are putting the ball in harm's way a little bit more, and you're giving a really good pass rushing unit in TJ Watt, Nick Herbig, Highsmith, etc., Harmon, Hayward, a lot of opportunity to rush the quarterback. So you have to be multiple. And especially, again, if the run game's not going, some of those quick passing plays are an extension of the run game to try to get you some short and, manageable down and distances as well and stay, stay with the chains and keep it kind of moving. So I understand, again, the overall philosophy and wanting to make Jordan the sort of true point guard of this team and let everything run through him. I'm all for that, but you still have to be multiple in everything you're doing or things are going to go very poorly for you very fast. Our schedule gets much more difficult, and I'm assuming you mean one complete game under our belt in week 1. Which do you see as must-win games of the remaining to secure a playoff spot? Meat grinder coming. Yeah, David, I'm not concerned about a playoff spot. No offense, but that's the least of my concerns right now. I get that the NFC is pretty stacked at the moment, but the Packers, if they don't make the playoffs, something has gone catastrophically wrong. The schedule is interesting. I think it brings an interesting blend of games. Really want this win against Carolina because I think this is their easiest game remaining on the schedule. Philly at home is going to be a really big game. Don't sleep on New York in New York. Now, with no Malik Neighbors and no Cam Scatterbo and just how injured they are, it certainly lessens the blow of potentially going to New York, but they've been feisty. Abdul Carter's a really good pass rusher. Brian Burns is playing at an unbelievable level. They still have defensive ends that can wreck shop for them. Jackson Dart's given them a little boost of life. And Yeah, I think Tyrone Chasey will be able to pick up the slack a little bit for Scadaboo as well. That's not an easy game. So it's one they should win, but I don't think it's going to be an easy one. I actually think the Vikings games are going to be easy. I think JJ McCarthy, there's a reason they haven't wanted to bring him back quicker. Carson Wentz is now out. I think the Vikings games will be very, very winnable. I think the Vikings game at home is probably about as easy as that Panthers game, if I'm being honest, maybe even easier. Lions on the road is going to be tough. Bears at home is going to be very winnable, but Bears are going to play them tough. Broncos on the road is tough. I think Bears on the road is tough. Ravens is going to be tough because it's a must win. And then like I said, I think the Vikings aren't going to have anything to play for in that week 18 game. So that one's probably another easy one. So I look at it as Eagles, Lions, Broncos, at Bears, and Ravens are their 5 remaining tough games. Even if they win all the other ones that they should, even if they go 2-3 in their 5 tough games, they end 4-1 is 5. So what, 11, 4-1? No, 12, 4-1. They end 12, 4-1, even if they go 2-3 in their 5 tough games, assuming they win their other ones. So take care of Carolina, take care of the Giants, take care of the Vikings, take care of Chicago at home. You get those 5 wins, you're already sitting at 7-1-1, or sorry, 10-1-1. And then again, how many of the 5 tough ones can you get? And I think they can get 3. But maybe they get 3, maybe they lose one of the winnable ones or something like that. I think 12-4-1 is a very reasonable outcome for the season. And then just the question remains, is that good enough to beat Detroit? And is one of those losses that you have against Detroit? Those are going to be very interesting aspects, because you really want to win the North to at least get that home game. And you would love to win the NFC as well. If you're looking at Detroit, they've got Minnesota at home this week. That's a pretty easy one. At Commanders, hopefully Jaden Daniels is back by then, and that's going to be a must win for the Commanders. Then they go to the Eagles. That's going to be a big game. Sunday Night Football, Lions at Eagles. Giants at home should be easy for Detroit. Packers at home is a huge game. They've got the Cowboys at home. They go to the Rams, which is a tough game. Steelers at home. Then they end with at Vikings and at Bears. So Lions have a couple of tough ones on there as well. You could probably argue either way of who has the tougher schedule, but that Lions Packers game on Thanksgiving is going to go a huge way in shaping the rest of the season and who ultimately wins the NFC North. I feel like the play calling in the second half wasn't as conservative as weeks before. What do you think? Victim of circumstance to some degree, right? They're down by 12, or sorry, they're down by 9 in that, to start the second half. They've got to be a little bit more aggressive. I'll actually say I thought Matt did a pretty good job of staying on balance in the second half, despite being, down early in that half. But they found a way to make it work. And yeah, it's when you are down by 9, you're down by 2 scores and the other team gets the ball at a half, like, yeah, you're going to have to be a little bit more aggressive at times. I thought Matt was, but I thought there were times still that he stayed patient when he needed to, especially on those first couple drives to start the second half. But yeah, when you're down, you usually, end up having to get a little bit more aggressive to kind of get back in that game. I'm loving what Bullard is doing. He flies around the field. What a jump from year 1 to year 2. I talked about last year. I thought it was far overanalyzed of like Bullard had a bad year or anything like that. In coverage, he struggled in year 1, no question. But I think a lot of people were ignoring all the other stuff he brought to the table. He's a really good football player. He's taken a real legitimate step. I also love the way that he flies around. Him and Evan Williams, I don't think are getting anywhere near the credit that they deserve for how well they've played on defense for Green Bay so far. Love the way that both of them are playing. And again, his ability to attack those wide receiver screens has been highly important for this team. And there are times, by the way, don't get it twisted, they're using Bullard in that slot. He's basically like an extra linebacker. You can almost look at it as a 4-3 with your 2 defensive ends, 2 defensive tackles, and then Quay, Cooper, and Bullard as your 3 linebackers too. So he's got that almost like hybrid ability to almost play like a corner, a safety, and almost give you a little bit of a linebacker look as well. He's been really important to this team. Glad you brought that up. Let's go to Andy. What's up with Marshawn Lloyd? RJ, your guess is as good as mine. We'll find out tomorrow if his window gets activated this week or not. Even once it is, I would assume it's going to take the full 3 weeks. So I would assume we're at least probably a month or so away from seeing our first Marshawn Lloyd action, but I have not seen or heard anything on Marshawn Lloyd whatsoever. Do you think we see Colin Oliver at some point this season? I forget what his injury was. It doesn't seem like it, unfortunately. I hope I'm wrong. What could easily end up happening is you have that 3-week window to play with. whether you are planning on activating them or not. And then if you don't activate them, you just put them on IR. So I could see if like John Williams, Colin Oliver, even if Marshawn Lloyd, hopefully Marshawn Lloyd doesn't go that long, or hopefully Brenton Cox doesn't go that long. But if that is, you just open the 3-week window at the end of the season to at least get them to practice for a few weeks with the team. And then even if you don't plan on activating them on the active roster, if they're not 100% yet, you just shut them down for the rest of the season at that point, and at least allow them maybe to get out there and get some reps with the team just to try to get some, acclimation for Colin Oliver in his rookie season. But it seems like we're trending in a direction that it may not go that way. But again, hopefully I'm wrong, and hopefully we're able to see him at some point. Seen a lot of plays on Nixon giving up way too soon. What do you do in that situation for him? I don't know how to feel. I want to go back and watch the one on film this week a little bit closer before I comment on it. I thought the first one early, there were two obvious ones that had happened. The one in, I think it was Dallas, and then this week where it felt like he gave up on it. The one in Dallas, to be fair, it looked like Dak threw that thing out of bounds, and then the receiver came back to it, and it just stayed in enough for a ridiculous catch along the sideline. I looked like Dak was throwing it away. Even if Nixon comes back on that play, I don't think he's making a play on that ball anyway. It's still, you want to stay with it, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it would have actually affected much on that specific scenario. This week looked a lot more egregious. He got turned around, but then he got turned around and then almost stopped. And it's one thing to get turned around, but then you got to keep locating and find the player and try to make a play on it. But either way, rough reps on specifically this last one for Keyshawn Nixon. I also think Matt should find a way to get Golden the touchdown sooner or later to quiet down the noise, especially since Savion scored on a play in which Golden could have as well. I mean, sometimes that's just the way it goes, right? I thought, as much as it pains me to say this, I talked with Paul Brettel for tomorrow's show as well. I thought Peter Bukowski brought up a really good point, and I just think it's worth remembering. Randall Cobb in his very first year in the NFL. Sorry, 1 second. Where did this go? In his very first year in the NFL in 2011, had 31 total targets and 25 total receptions for 375 yards. He played in 15 games that year, right? So that was and then the next year he had 80 plus catches. Matthew Golden's already at 26 targets, 21 catches for 253 yards. Sometimes it's hard out there for a rookie to get kind of acclimated into an offense and to get in that rhythm and timing and everything like that. Matthew Golden's played a lot of plays for this team. I think there's a lot more out there for him. We could easily see a breakout week coming one of these weeks for Matthew Golden. He's been trusted in clutch situations, including the huge 4th down play against Dallas, the huge 3rd down play against Cincinnati. He's put some really good football out on tape. I'm not concerned about Matthew Golden. He'll get his at some point. It's going to come. Maybe it's this week against Carolina, but I think Matthew needs to have a little bit of patience with it. The Packers should continue to have patience with it. Fans need to have patience with it. He's going to be a really good player. I love what I'm seeing out of him. And it's just a matter of time and when, not if in this case. Daily watcher, part-time commenter. Brian, thanks for being here. Just want to thank you for your effort and opinions. Go Pack Go, Brian. That's very kind of you. Thank you so much, and appreciate you being here today. Do you think the NFL will make any adjustments to its gambling policies given what happened to the NBA? They just sent out a bunch of memos and, mentioned what they're doing. And if you have, if you make any bets, or what was it? Like if you have any gambling losses greater than 10,000 or something, you're required to report it to the league. That's obviously non-sports gambling losses. It seems like they have a pretty good checks and balances in place, but these things are going to happen in baseball, hockey, college sports, NFL, NBA. There will be more of these, not less. I'm hopeful that the leagues are doing everything in their power. We just had Calvin Ridley suspended for a year for making bets, on some prop bets or things like that. It's unfortunate. You would hope that common sense would prevail and you're making a crap ton of money and you don't need to bet on sports while you're in the league. You have a full rest of your life to do that once you're out of the league. But listen, it's a tough thing. I understand it. But we'll see how it goes. And I'm sure the NFL is doing everything they can to monitor everything, to make sure that this stuff doesn't happen, to remind everyone of the policies and procedures. But at some point, it's up to the individuals to not make poor choices. The big thing you don't want to see is anyone throwing a game or not playing or anything like that. Those are the big ones. Those are game changers. It's one, if Calvin Ridley, or whomever, we don't even need to go Calvin Ridley or a specific player. Somebody bets on if there's a Packer that bets on a Colts Raiders game or something, right? Stupid as hell. Really, really freaking stupid. But it doesn't really affect anything. It's not like he's, in that game or sitting out of that game or, changing that game in some way. That's a lot different than if, say a Packer was, bet on or told a family member, somebody to bet on himself having less than 5 catches in a game. He's got 4 catches for 100 yards, game winner on the line. It's right there and he drops it. That's where you really don't want to get into that situation, right? So yeah, it's a tough scenario. It's a tough scene, but hopefully everyone is doing the right things and not making stupid decisions. That's all you can kind of hope for. Andy, do you think some of Jacob's struggles is due to teams specifically game planning to take him away? How many games have teams actually gone in trying to stop Jordan Love in the passing game? Thanks a ton. It's absolutely a piece of it. I also think just the run blocking hasn't been good. I don't think Josh Jacobs is struggling. For those of you who are maybe concerned about Jacobs has been really freaking good. He's made, as Mike Wall would say, chicken salad out of chicken, what, more often than not. I like the way that Josh Jacobs is playing. I think he's super talented. I think he's doing everything he can. I just think that, yes, teams are game planning against it, and the run blocking just hasn't been good enough. Run blocking gets better. We're going to see a lot better version of Josh Jacobs. Daryl, it's a fair question, and the answer is unequivocally no. Let me ask you this, Daryl, and this is not directed towards you because I've seen this question before. What do you gain right now by moving on from Marshawn Lloyd? The answer is nothing. He's not taking up a roster spot right now. He's on injured reserve. If you cut him, you gain no savings from this season whatsoever. There might be like a handful of, I have to look at it a little bit closer, but it's not anything of significance, even if it is. You can just look it up and tell you for sure. Yeah, there's a slight cap savings overall. It's nothing worth even mentioning of how minimal the cap savings would be. And he was one of the most talented running backs in training camp that we have seen in a while in Packers camp these last couple of years. There's, again, nothing that you gain out of it. You lose the potential of having a phenomenal running back and a 3rd round pick just because you wanted to give up. Just because you're like, I don't want him anymore. And you gain nothing by doing that. So if you're frustrated, and I'm saying from a Packers standpoint, if you're like, he can't stay healthy or whatever. Well, you let him sit the rest of the season on IR. You don't reactivate him. And as soon as the season's done, you can search for trade options if you want. I bet somebody would be willing to maybe trade a 7th round pick or a conditional 7th round pick if you really wanted something in return, or you just let him go through camp. And if he can't make it through camp again, then yes, then you talk about cutting bait. But what if he goes through camp next year and he looks freaking awesome and he doesn't get hurt next year? You just release that guy for no reason whatsoever. So there's zero advantage. And the best thing to do is hopefully you get him back this year. And, what happens if Josh Jacobs gets hurt or something? He could be a major option for you down the road if he can come in and play some good football for you. So there's still the option that he can help this team this year. Again, doesn't take up a roster spot in the time being. And then next year, you just let him come in and compete in camp. And if he's hurt or if he's not good enough, you cut him at that point. But you give him that opportunity to show that he can be a huge help to this team, a huge asset, and stay healthy. And if he can, you definitely want to have him have the opportunity to do so. So there's zero reason to cut losses with Lloyd at this point in time. Andy, can you name your top 5, bottom 5 on offense and defense after these first 7 games? Love your grades episodes. Yeah, I haven't finished this week yet, so this is prior to Steelers, but top 5 on offense. Top 5 on offense is Jordan Love, followed by Josh Jacobs, followed by Tucker Kraft, followed by Matthew Golden, followed by Romeo Doubs. Those are your top 5. Bottom 5 on offense are Jordan Morgan, Darian Kennard, Rasheed Walker, Anthony Belton, and Elton Jenkins. And you might say, oh, it's just you're grading offensive line harsher. Just remember that David Bakhtiari and Corey Linsley have had some of the best grades that I've ever given anyone ever, and those were on the offensive line. So you are very capable of having very positive grades on the offensive line, and David Bakhtiari and Corey Linsley are great examples of that. Right now, the offensive line has not been good enough. Top 5 on defense: Micah Parsons, number 1, Evan Williams, number 2, and then tied for 3 are Devontae Wyatt and Edgerrin Cooper. And then number 5 is actually Isaiah McDuffie, who had actually, I thought, played some really good football in very minimal snaps so far this year. So those are my top 5. There's some like right after McDuffie, though, including Javon Bullard and Rashawn Gary and Colby Wooden, who are like just 0.05 below where Isaiah McDuffie is right now. So those are, and then my bottom 5 in defense: Nate Hobbs, Carrington Valentine, Carl Brooks, Brenton Cox, and then Nasir Stackhouse. Those are my bottom 5. Again, that's going to change, I'm sure, this week after the Steelers grades. Do you think McManus came back too early? If so, do you think we should just stick with Lucas Haversick? He's younger leg and he's made a 60-yarder. No, I'm very much in the boat of keeping McManus. Whether they brought him back a week too early or not, I don't know. Listen, a 58-yarder or whatever is not an easy kick. I know it has been more in the NFL this year. That's still a tough one. Can't miss the 40-yarder. That's a disappointment. I don't think that had anything to do with the injury. I think he just missed it. So it is what it is, but I expect McManus to bounce back. And like I said, if my life or the season were on the line, or whatever you want to view it as this week, and it's a however many yarder and the choice is between Haversick and McManus, I'll take McManus. Do you think we could trade Luke Musgrave before the deadline? Could, yes. Will, no. Should, maybe. If anything, you're probably just doing like a change of scenery trade for like another tight end who didn't work out somewhere, would be my guess. But yeah, I think there could be tight ends that would be maybe beneficial. Again, maybe a change of scenery trade. Okonkwo in Tennessee, maybe Mayer in with the Raiders, something like that could make some sense. But my guess is it probably doesn't take place. Not Packers related, but can you explain the no fumble call in the Eagles-Giants game? It seems as bad as it gets. It's as bad as it gets. So anytime a play is stopped with like forward momentum or something like that, you cannot go back and change it or review it or anything like that. They ruled forward momentum was stopped, but if you listen to the whistle came after the fact. Like I don't know what they were viewing or thinking of on that play. It was a clear and obvious fumble. Should have been Giants ball in a really, probably the worst call that I've seen so far this year. Even if you listen to it, the whistle looked like it came after. Just a really, really bad officiated play by everyone involved in that, and just embarrassing for the league in that situation. Go Pack Go, and Bears still suck. Appreciate you, Aaron. Seems like Jacobs can't cut like he did last year in the open field. I feel it's because of his leg. Should we just stick with Wilson going down the field and save Jacobs for red zone plays? Daryl, I think this last game, maybe a little bit coming off the injury, but I mean, he made a pretty sick cut in, it was either this last game or the game before that. And he had that burst to the outside on the touchdown run the week before. So now I still think Jacobs has a ton of value right now. And I think he's going to continue to get healthier. We'll still see some of those cuts that he's capable of. So, mix and match the two if you want, but I still think Jacobs has a lot of value right now. To clarify, I meant the run game overall. He's still fun as hell to watch on all 22. Gotcha. Yep. All good. When can we expect to extend Tucker, and how could his new contract look? I would expect that. I think they can now. I'd have to double check that, but I think they can now. But I would expect that in the offseason, and I would expect him to be, if not the highest paid tight end in the league, right there, right next to it. So that's what I would expect. Is Elton Jenkins mad about being center or something? He seems like he's struggling a lot more and can't hold up like last year. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but it hasn't still been good enough for Elton. Mike talked about it as well. Mike thinks it's a little bit more to him playing center. I just think he's not playing great football at the moment. I'll lean on Mike on that one. I trust him more than myself when it comes to offensive line evaluations, but either way, it hasn't been good enough, and they need a lot better from Elton Jenkins moving forward. Thoughts on if we should trade for a good corner before the deadline? Yeah, I talked about this a little bit earlier, but I'm all for it if you can find the right one. I just think the more competition and depth that you can add to this team for a team that's trying to win a Super Bowl, the better. And I know that you believe in Keyshawn Nixon and you paid Nate Hobbs and you like Valentine, and Bullard's not coming off the field. But you know what? If you've got an opportunity to get an upgrade at corner, I think you take it, you try to find a way, and you kind of move forward with it. So if they could, I would absolutely be in favor of it. Only thing to point out, in McManus missed on the 58-yarders. It was missed short, not left or right. That's not like him. Yeah, and I think that's a fair thing. I do know the field was not in great condition. I don't know what the wind was like or anything like that, but surprising to see him kick it short for sure. I wasn't short by much, but it was short by enough to miss. And that's the one thing where you maybe wonder if it was, again, maybe a week too early or 2 weeks too early for him coming back, or at least knowing then in that situation that he doesn't have the distance on that type of field goal. He looked surprised he missed it. So I don't know if maybe he just didn't get enough of it on that particular one or what happened, but we'll see, I guess. What are your top 4 predictions for the NFC playoffs this year? Adam, I don't know if I have anything spicy right now. I'll just say, as a general rule, I think Tampa and the Rams are really good. I think the NFC is stacked, and I think that playoff run in the NFC is going to be insanely freaking difficult. If you told me that the Buccaneers, the Rams, the Eagles, the Lions, or the Packers came out of the NFC, I would not be stunned at all. I think it's a really stacked NFC. And then the Seahawks are going to be a pain in the ass to play. And if the 49ers can, put their best football together, they are very dangerous as well, even with some of the injuries they have. So I think the NFC is going to be a brutal pain in the ass. You really want that first round bye this year. Is it true the Niners called about Rashawn Gary for Renardo Green and some draft capital, or is that just rumors? I don't know for sure, but just know that phone calls like this take place a lot. Green Bay's not going to trade Rashawn Gary, so you can pretty much rest assured that he's not going anywhere. Do you think they should use Hobbs in the slot on passing downs? It seems like the best way to use him, since Bullard has had a tough time against wide receivers at times. You really can't pull CV at this point. Yeah, I think there's some opportunity there. I love the way that Bullard's playing, so I don't really need to see him off the field too much. But I think in like a 3rd and 15 obvious passing situation, and you're still playing in nickel, then yeah, I think Hobbs makes sense over Bullard in that situation. But yeah, we'll see. And right now, Bullard's playing some really great football. And like I said, I don't have a huge desire to see him off the field too much. All right, friends, looks like we got to all of our questions. We're about an hour in. I do have to get to Paul Farrington and Ziggy to record their episode, or our episode, for tomorrow. Really looking forward to this one. Should be a ton of fun. Make sure to check that out. Also, we'll have the Paul Brettel episode for you tomorrow afternoon as well. Thursday will be Justice, and then Grades episode in the afternoon. Friday will be Carmen Vitale, and then happy hour on Friday afternoon. Saturday will be, I don't know yet. Saturday will be something. I'll probably do trade deadline on Saturday, because I don't think I'll have the opportunity to actually talk about it before trade deadline. So probably talk about trade deadline options on Saturday, and then Mike Wall's film breakdown of the Panthers on Saturday. Sunday will be pregame show, including, I think, live pregame show, and for sure live postgame show. See you guys all very, very soon. Till next time. And as always, go Pack Go.